Welcome to our lovely colleagues who are joining us from around the UK, because usually I deliver my webinars just for the East of England, but today this is part of our delivery programme for the summer, where we all take turns to deliver over the summer. So to those of you who haven't been along to any of my webinars before, hello, thank you for coming. And my name is Kim Barnetson, and I'm the childminding partner for the Reach Out Stronger Practice Hub. Can I ask you to mute yourself if you haven't accidentally done it? Thank you. And as I say, this is for everyone around the UK today. So I'm very pleased to see you all here. Just before we get started, I'm going to let you know where all my evidence comes from. So tonight we're using the new version of the EYFS, which I'm sure you're probably all familiar with already. It's already out, but it doesn't actually become statutory until September. Here is the link if you need it. Obviously, you can just Google it if not. And I'm using the up-to-date version of Birth to 5 Matters, which came out last week. So for anyone who hasn't seen that yet, here is the link for that. And as always, this isn't just me saying, these are nice things to do, this is a good idea. Everything we do is evidence-based. And so we're using the evidence from the Education Endowment Foundation's Early Years Evidence Store. There's a lot of E's in that sentence. Here is the link for that. So if anyone wants to look at that, it's really interesting. It's what they call metadata. They find the most effective ways to support learning and development. So everything we talk about, I try and make it practical for you all. What does it look like in your setting? But it's based on research and evidence to show, are the most effective ways to support the children that we're caring for. And as I was saying just a little while ago, this is an interactive sort of webinar. So we're going to be using Slido. If people aren't familiar with that, it's just a little app that you scan the QR code, and then you can add things to the webinar. When I get to that bit, I'll tell you about it. You just need to have your phone ready. If you haven't got your phone ready to do that, or you're not able to, don't worry, just put your answer in the chat so we can all interact. So we are calling tonight's webinar Principles of the EYFS, a Recipe for Success. And I've called it a recipe for success because effective early years practice is like a recipe. Every ingredient matters and contributes to better outcomes for children. So join me this evening and we're going to make a learning and development cake. Forgive me, I got a bit carried away with this theme. Everything has a cake or baking related image to go with it. Here's our agenda for this evening. We're going to have a look at the 4 overarching principles of the EYFS. We're going to have a think about how those principles look in reality when they're in our setting and how they work together. And then we're going to have, as usual, time for a chat. But before we do that, we have the lovely Kayla Halls from Middlesex University, who's going to talk to us about a research project on babies in childminding settings. And then we'll have our chat.
You can listen to it as well if you want.
Oh, you don't listen to it? Karen, I'm so sorry. Could you just mute yourself, please? Thank you.
Sorry, Kim.
No, that's all right. I'll let you off, Karen, because it's you. Karen's one of my friends who lives nearby and is an absolutely amazing childminder. Right. Okay, so we're going to start off with Slido. So if you've got your phone and you can scan the QR code, please do that now. And then we're going to answer this question in like 1 or 2 words. What do you think is the most important ingredient in supporting children's learning and development? As I say, if you can't put it on there, just pop it in the chat. Strong relationships, very good, thank you. Communication, consistency, very good answers, thank you. Relationships again, lovely. I'm just checking the chat in case anything's on there. Play, positive relationships, a present practitioner, connecting with the children, play, key person and environment, knowing the child inside out, parental involvement, knowing the children inside. Lovely. Now let's have a look, see what's on the Slido. Secure relationships, working in partnership, enabling environment, positivity, feeling safe, communication, allowing them to grow. Anyone would think that you had already read the principles of the EYFS, because these are exactly the words I'm going to be using tonight in our presentation. Well done, everyone. Thank you. I'm just going to see if anything else comes back in. Flexible, yes. Flexible strategies, exactly. Knowledge of the EYFS. I'm trying to see where the new ones are coming in. High quality teaching and learning, lovely. Fab. Thank you ever so much. One more person's typing and then we'll move on to the next screen. Being happy, of course, being happy, that's key really, isn't it? Equality, thank you. Lovely. I think someone else, it says, still typing. Interactions, lovely. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to move on to the next screen, but thank you. These words are exactly what I wanted to hear from you, because it shows me that you're already really good reflective practitioners and you know your stuff already. So everything I'm going to tell you in this webinar, you already know, but bear with me and just let's pretend we don't know about it. Actually, some of us tonight may be new to early years. So we always have to think about how we share that knowledge and that understanding with our newer colleagues. So you're quite right. All of those things you just talked about in the Slido were the 4 overarching principles of the EYFS. So if you were to look in Birth to 5 Matters, it actually looks like a recipe, which is what gave me this idea. It says a unique child plus positive relationships plus enabling environments equals learning and development. It's like a maths question or a recipe. You put these ingredients together, you get learning and development. And we know that, don't we? We do know that, probably without even thinking about it, especially if you've been in early years for a while. So let's explore these individual overarching principles of the EYFS. First off, the unique child. You'll see there's a range of fruits here. They're representing a diversity of different children in our setting. So the EYFS tells us that children are constantly learning and developing at their own pace. They have their own likes and interests and come to us with their unique set of experiences and opportunities. So quite often we're talking about cultural capital, aren't we? And I know that's sometimes a little bit confusing for some practitioners, especially maybe newer practitioners. But what that means is we all have a range of experiences that help us to navigate our way through life and through society. And some children come to you with a full and rich range of experiences and opportunities already, and some children don't. For example, you might have children come into your setting who haven't been read to very often, or haven't had access to outside large spaces, or have never been to the seaside, or have never been on a bus, or all these things that we sort of take for granted every day. Children also, as we know, they have their own interests. We all know that about the children in our settings, don't we? They also have their own set of challenges, things that might be going on in their family, or they may have SEN needs, or they may have a disability. It's like a massive range of different things that a child is coming to us with. And it's important to us, or important to the child, that we view that child as an individual. So let's have a think. Imagine one of the children in your setting. I know, if someone says that to me about a child in my setting, I can just think, oh, I know that child. I know all about that child. So you may have several children, let's say, for instance, 3-year-olds. You may have several 3-year-olds in your setting. Yeah, their development might be similar, but their learning and learning style and their challenges and their interests are unique to them, aren't they? Just like they are for us. If we think we're just really a bigger version of those children, we might all be childminders or early years practitioners. It doesn't mean we all like to learn in the same way, or that we all have the same interests. We've all got our own range of things, haven't we? And children are exactly the same. So how are we understanding their uniqueness and supporting them as an individual? We need to make sure that we look at that child and we curate and, as someone said in the Slido, provide a flexible pedagogy or teaching for that child, that suits that child's particular needs and interests at that time and stage in their development. Anyone who's seen the new Birth to 5 Matters, there's always been a strong emphasis on stage rather than age, but that's been really focused on in the new version, that we should be looking at stage rather than age. So we've got this broad range of learning developments, because we know we might look at an individual child. They might all be the same age, as I say, but one might have a communication delay. One might be a particularly shy or anxious child. One might have an issue with mobility. One might be particularly interested in wildlife, while another one's particularly interested in malleable play. It's all their own individual needs, and it's up to us to see them, focus on them, and curate our pedagogy and our offering to them. Now, if we look at number 2, they're stretching it a bit, the relationship source, but it was the nearest I could get to a baking thing with a relationship in. So positive relationships, that came up several times, didn't it, in the Slido? And we can look at that from several different viewpoints, can't we? Obviously, that's us and the child, which is the main relationship in our setting, isn't it? So we know that children learn best when they feel valued, safe, understood and supported. And this is embedded in the EYFS in the key person approach. If you're a childminder and you're not working with anyone else, you are automatically the key person for those children. If you're in a larger setting, each child has to have a key person attached to them. And also not just us and the child, but it's also the requirement for us to work in partnership. So that's with parents and carers, other professionals, if you're in a bigger setting, other colleagues. We need to put the child at the centre of these relationships and strengthen that network of relationships around them. So what does this look like, this positive relationship in practice, if we're thinking about us and the child in this scenario? So we need to be showing a warm and genuine interest. When that child comes over to you and shows you something, or is excited about something, or is worried about something, we need to be genuinely interested in them. Children are no different to us. They know when people are faking it. And even though realistically, we know we all have days where things are a little bit busier than others, but we still need to make an effort to show a warm and genuine interest in that child. They need to be seen as an individual. We need to engage in quality interactions. If you're not sure what that means, there's a very good website called Help for Early Years Providers, and that has a section on the Shrek approach, which is all about quality interactions. And I have a webinar about that on our YouTube channel if anyone's interested in taking that further. But basically, that means someone's talking. It means that we are engaging in interactions with that child as if they were an adult, because research shows us that young children in early years settings, the majority of language they hear is instructions, and instructions sort of from adults who are taller than them were shouted across the top of their heads, if you like. Put your shoes on, go and wash your hands, it's time for lunch, it's time to put your coat on, it's time to go home. We all have to give instructions because that's part of life, but they aren't quality interactions. A quality interaction is a conversation where you listen to the child, they listen to you. You gently extend their communication during those interactions. So a child starts telling you about their birthday, you start asking them questions about their birthday, and you're gradually extending what they're talking about. They are being seen. They're not just a number in your setting. We're engaging in quality interactions. That's what a positive relationship looks like. And part of that also is hearing the voice of the child. For those of you who are familiar with the UNCRC, which is the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, human rights, but for children. I'm so sorry, Taylor. Would you mind turning your mic off, please? Thank you. Thank you. Hearing the voice of the child means, how is that child communicating with you? It might not be verbally. It's understanding their needs and interests. So it's the unique child, and it's advocating for them. Children have the right to be heard and the right to communicate. So if we're thinking about a child, let's say, for instance, a child is moving from your setting and going up to school or going to a preschool. You're advocating for that child by explaining to the preschool what that child needs. Would you mind just muting your microphone, please? You're saying this child is really worried when it's drop-off time. This is how I support them. Or this child really needs lots of outside time using gross motor skills. That's their interest. Or this child has a schema where they want to rotate things. Please, can you make that happen in your setting too? That's advocating for the child and their needs. We also need to give them consistency. That came up on the slide as well, didn't it? So it's a little bit boring from our point of view, but it's a privilege as well. We need to be that person that's there day in, day out, in the background, supporting the child in a calm and consistent way. Children don't need lots of drama. There's enough drama in life. They need a calm, consistent person. That is a secure base for that child to come back to when they're concerned, when they're worried. They know you are there for them. You are consistent. In my own practice, I'm currently childminding the children of my first childminding family. And so they're like extra grandchildren, really. Think about the amount of years of consistency that have always been there. I've always been that person in the background. And it's the same for all of you as well, isn't it? So Karen, who we mentioned earlier, she's been childminding for 30 years. Think of the consistency for those children that have been in her setting, that have been lucky enough to have her to care for them consistently for years. And especially with childminding, depending on your business model, sometimes you're caring for children from when they're 3 or 4 months old up until they go to secondary school. So it's really important that we are that person in the background that's calm, that's just always there in the background. And then lastly, this also came up as well, didn't it? Time. I think some of you will be aware of the slow pedagogy movement. It's all about taking things back to a slower pace, not feeling the need to rush through one activity after another. Children don't need that. It's not an effective way of supporting learning and development. Of course, some days are busier than others, but we have the absolute privilege of working with these children in these wonderful early years that they only get one chance at. And what they deserve is all of these things, and they deserve time to explore, time to try something out again and again and again, and just keep trying it out. Time to just play. That came up in the Slido, didn't it? Because play is learning. That's how children learn. Time to go down that slide 20 times if they want to. Time to build that den and knock it down again and again and again, because they're learning all the time. We have the ability to make that happen. So one of the issues sometimes you see in early year settings is over planning. Let's do this, now we're going to do that, now we're going to do this, now we're going to do that. That's not really shown to be an effective way of supporting learning and development. We know, don't we, the EYFS tells us that children learn best when they lead their own learning. And part of that is just giving them time. So I would definitely suggest looking into slow pedagogy if you're interested. Now we're going to move on to the enabling environment, number 3. So, as we just said, children learn most effectively when they lead their own learning. That doesn't mean it's a free-for-all and children just do everything they want all the time. It means that you are the person that curates the environment for them based on that unique child and their individual needs. So when children are supported by a responsive adult who can scaffold, model and extend learning when you need to. Sometimes children are all the time children are hardwired to learn. Sometimes they're getting on fine. they've got the resources they need, and they're just getting on with it. That's great. Sometimes they need someone to help them by scaffolding, literally helping them to do something, or modelling. That's working alongside a child to do the same thing and just sort of talking about how you're doing it, or extending learning. For example, a child's trying to fit pipes together to get them somewhere, to transport some water, and they're just a bit stuck. They're really struggling to sort it out. They're getting a little bit frustrated, and they ask you for some help. You can think about, what could we put in there? Shall we try this pipe? Shall we try that pipe? You're scaffolding, you're modelling, and you're extending learning. So to do this in an enabling environment, and there's lots of webinars about this on our YouTube channel, they need an environment which is interesting, sparks curiosity, and provokes exploration and challenge. Let's think about the enabling environment in practice. Does your environment invite children to explore and experiment? Can they move things around? Take one thing from inside and take it outside? Can they access things? Are there interesting things? So when the children come into your setting, is it same old, or is it, wow, what is that really interesting thing? Wow, what could be in that box? Oh, look at that. It needs to be something that encourages children to explore and experiment. Think about, does it promote or hinder independence? So it's very easy to support independence and enable independence in early years, because just doing small things really supports children, giving them the choice of whether they're going to wear wellies or shoes, or having access to their spare clothes so they can get changed by themselves, and not worrying if their t-shirt's on back to front, or they've got their socks on inside out. None of that matters. So are we promoting or hindering independence? If we're hindering independence, try and think of some very simple ways you can support independence. For example, can all of the children get access to all of your continuous provision? Not necessarily all of your resources. Let's be realistic. I couldn't have all my resources out at the same time. There wouldn't be any room. But your continuous provision, the stuff that's out all the time, can they access mark-making materials without having to ask you? Can they access scissors without having to ask for them? This little one here was really interested in using anything mechanical. So he could just come out and use that at the mud kitchen. This is in my setting. And there were lots of other things. And so then we have to think about, is it reflecting this child's interest? I know he likes mechanical things. So how can I extend that? I know, I'll look in my other resources and see what I've got that's similar, that could support his learning moving forward. Also, does it support his learning style? Has that child got a schema? And if so, how are you supporting that? And you cannot support a schema by making a child do a particular thing. You have to let them do it in their own way. For example, if you've got a child that has an enveloping schema, are you providing tape, masking tape? Are you providing fabric? Are you providing things that they can envelop? They might want to use Play-Doh and envelop things in the Play-Doh. Whatever their schema is or their learning style is, how are you supporting that? And is it fluid or fixed? So is your environment, I think this came up on the slide as well, didn't it? Is your environment always exactly the same? Probably some of the things are, aren't they? I'm not going to take my climbing frame down, but some of the other things around it change, don't they? The mud kitchen one week might have some herbs on it. The next week it might have some flowers that I've been given. So it's about changing things. It's about adding things, curating. Think about the child's interests and how you're curating those. Now, when we're thinking about your enabling environment, our lovely childminding colleague, Kate Cooling-Smith, has this very good phrase, which is turn your thinking into a yes mentality. So can I paint the Play-Doh? Yes. Can I take the Play-Doh into the mud kitchen? Yes. Can I add paint to the Play-Doh? Yes. Can I add paint to the mud kitchen? Yes. Why are we saying no? Makes a mess? Doesn't matter. What matters is that the children's learning and development is supported. So we can curate all of those things. We can provide all of that lovely enabling environment, and we need to let children be able to access it to engage with it, don't we? Okay, now I haven't got a picture for this one because we've had our three ingredients, haven't we? We've got the unique child, we've had the relationships, and we've had the enabling environment. So now we've added those to our cooking bowl and we've mixed them all together. We should start seeing some learning and developing happening. But how do we know if our recipe is a success while it's still cooking? Well, we observe and we assess. Now, I don't want you to think that I'm saying sit down and write observations and use a tracker, because the EYFS clearly states assessment should not involve long breaks from interaction with children or require excessive paperwork. I'm just going to skim this because you don't want me to read all this out, I'm sure, and you're probably all familiar with it anyway. Childminders should draw on their knowledge of the child and their own expert professional judgment when you're supporting a child's development. Childminders are not required to prove this through a collection of any physical evidence. Ongoing assessment, also called formative assessment, is an integral part of the learning and developing process. It involves practitioners understanding children's interests, what they know, what they can do, and then shaping the teaching and learning around them. This is an ongoing, everyday, minute by minute, almost in the moment planning. It happens because you see a child doing something, you're thinking, oh, that's really interesting. He couldn't manage that last week. I wonder if he'd like it if I added this. Or I know that child's particularly interested in this, so I'm going to make sure whatever it is also available next week for them, or that day or that afternoon. If you've got a child you know really wants to dig deeply, take them to the beach. It's that simple. You don't have to write it down. You don't have to assess it. Your knowledge of the child tells you whether that's been successful, doesn't it? So you don't need to keep written records. I know some settings do. It's completely up to you if you want to, but please free yourself from the need to do observations for observation's sake. It's not a requirement, and they're not really effective. An observation just because a child has an observation once a month doesn't tell you anything. But your knowledge of the child, so if you exchange the word observation for knowledge, your knowledge of that child. So if I came to your setting and said, tell me about this child, what do they like? How are you supporting their development? Have they got any challenges? You'd be able to tell me, wouldn't you? Because you're all really good practitioners. That's what this means, how we're observing and assessing. So there are only, I'm sure you all know, but just in case anyone doesn't, the only formal assessments we are required to undertake are the 2-year integrated check. And if you have a child that stays with you throughout their foundation year, you need to do the foundation year stage profile at the end of that. That's really rare, so probably not something you're going to need to do. Most settings do a baseline assessment when a child starts. That's quite good practice, just to give you a starting point of any concerns you might have about that child. But otherwise, free yourself. That slow pedagogy goes for you as well as the child. We can learn much more by sitting with the children and engaging with them than we can from writing in some tracker about them. Okay, so we have put our cake in the oven, our learning and development cake. Let's not forget the sprinkles and all the bits on the top. And for that, I'd like to just quickly talk about the characteristics of effective learning. If anyone knows me, they know that I am very big on the characteristics of effective learning. The characteristics of effective learning tell us how a child learns, not what a child learns. And they help us understand and identify individual learning styles and support children to become resilient, confident, and critical thinkers. So the characteristics of effective learning, I suggest if you're not familiar with them, look in Birth to 5 Matters, are playing and exploring, and they're broken down to individual components inside these. Active learning and creativity and thinking critically. So lots of problem solving, which is what we've been seeing in that enabling environment, haven't we? So don't forget those, it's crucial. Characteristics of effective learning are crucial. And actually there's a webinar again on that on our page. So let's have a think. We have put the cake in the oven, but as has happened to me on occasion, I've suddenly realised we've forgotten one of the crucial ingredients. We have forgotten the unique child. Can you scan the QR code, please, and tell me what's going to happen if we've got an enabling environment? Can we even have an enabling environment? And the relationship, if we haven't got the unique child, if we haven't taken that into consideration. I hope that makes sense. Just having a quick look on the chat while everyone's typing. So Shannon said, understanding your child's needs, being present, active participation, strong relationships, patient and positive. I guess that was from the original Slido, Shannon, wasn't it? But actually, it also meets with the stuff we've been talking about now as well. So thank you for that. Right, let's read some of these. The child won't develop or engage as well as they could do. Yeah, because you're not meeting their individual needs. Their behaviour might change. We wouldn't necessarily know why their behaviour's changed. Has something changed at home? We haven't taken it into consideration because we're not seeing them as an individual child. We're just seeing them as another 3-year-old in our setting, or 4-year-old, 2-year-old. Their needs are not met. That is crucial. Unable to meet their individual needs. Lack of attachment, definitely. Children's attachment varies depending on the child. Some children might need a long time to bond with you and to form an attachment. Some children may be super confident and just come in. Whatever it is, we need to take that in. That's why I struggle sometimes with settings having very prescribed settling in sessions, because that doesn't take into account that child's individual needs, does it? I understand it's not always easy to do that. I completely understand. So the child is not seen. Thank you. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Potential parent conflict. Yes, definitely. Child might be withdrawn or push for attention. Yeah, because they're not being seen. Exactly. They're not being seen. That child is not being heard. The voice of that child is not being heard. Lack of confidence, self-understanding. Yes, we're not being a reflective educator. Exactly. Identifying additional needs. Yes, exactly. That child might have an additional need and you would never know. The child could become withdrawn. Yes, definitely. Additional needs again, withdrawn again. The child might not understand. Yeah, you might not be pitching your pedagogy at the right level for that child's stage of development. Attachment affected. Needs not being left. Yeah, lack of attachment, unable to meet individual needs not met, disengaged, behaviour changes. Child won't develop or engage as well as they could do. Exactly. Child may not be able to learn as easily. Disengaged children, they may have no interest or ability to access. Less engagement, frustrated child, definitely. Interest not supported, could affect their playing and exploring. Child not reaching their full potential. We reflect and improve for the next day. Child not engaged, children left behind. Thank you so much, everyone. It says I've got 4 new responses. Where are they? Are they at the top? Oh no. Bear with me. Oh no, I've come out of the thing. So sorry. I got a bit carried away with all those wonderful Slido answers. Bear with me, I'll go back in. Sorry, everyone. It's behind there. I just need to go back. It's very easy to accidentally click on one of these things, especially when you're reading lots of things like that. So, right, it should be doing it now. Okay, let's move on from that screen so I don't accidentally click the Slido again. So yes, you're quite right, everyone. So let's have a look at the other principles and think what's going to happen if we forget those ingredients. So as we just saw, if we forget to include the unique child, we won't be able to accurately plan to support that child's individual needs. We'll just be saying all the 3-year-olds are going to do this activity, regardless of whether that child can do that activity, is interested in that activity. all that type of thing. You may not pitch your delivery or your pedagogy correctly for that child's stage of development, and you may not be aware of any potential SEND needs or the need for early intervention. So you're quite right, and that's exactly what you were all saying, wasn't it? What about if we forget the positive relationship? Well, we did touch on this a little bit in the unique child, didn't we? Because all of these areas overlap. You can't have one of those ingredients without including the other two. So if we forget the positive relationship, as you quite rightly said, the child may struggle with an insecure attachment and might not be able to engage in learning and development. A stressed child cannot learn in the same way that a stressed adult can't. Your brain literally stops you from learning when you're stressed. And as someone else quite rightly said, you may not be aware of issues within the family which might affect that child's development or their behaviour. So we have to have that unique child and positive relationship going. What about if we look in the cupboard and we've run out of enabling environment? Well, without an enabling environment, the child is not challenged. They're not able to lead their own learning. They develop critical thinking or independence skills. So I don't know if everyone knows, but I go, as well as my job here with the Stronger Practice Hub, I'm also an early years assessor. So I go to all sorts of different settings, large and small. And I see some absolutely amazing practice. And then I see some practice where the enabling environment is not as good as it could be. And then I see children who are bored, who are not engaged, who are their behaviour is a little bit more challenging because they don't really have anything to sort of latch onto as something to explore, engage in. And then I go to some settings where it's just calm and enabled, and children are just having an amazing time, and the staff are calm and they're talking to the children in a calm way, and you can just see that learning happening in those settings. I'm realistic. We've all had days where things are busy, children are tired, someone else is poorly, it's pouring with rain outside, all of those things. We've all had days like that. So I'm not saying we all need to be 100% perfect all the time, but if we can try and include these principles of the EYFS in our practice as much as possible, all these ingredients, if they're present, we will get the perfect result. But hang on, I can hear you saying here, this is all about the child. Who's the chef in this scenario? Well, actually, the child is the chef. They lead and we follow. This is our role. We observe, so that means we just gather knowledge. It's nothing more than that. We observe, we listen to, and we understand that child. We curate our environment and experiences to suit that child. We enable them to follow their interests and learning style. We work in partnership to ensure continuity, and we provide a calm, stable setting for learning. That's our role. The child's role is to learn, and they do that through play and active exploration. So here is our cake. It's finished. It looks fantastic, doesn't it? In real life, I wouldn't ever stand a chance of creating a cake like this. But we can see our slices on there. Learning and development, enabling environments, positive relationships, and unique child. You need all of those together, all muddled up together in that mixing bowl to create this learning and develop cake. So every child deserves the ingredients they need to succeed. Remember, these children just have one chance at early years, and it goes by in a flash. It's our job to make sure those early years are magical, are calm, are engaged, are exciting, and children have really rich learning experiences. Okay, thank you so much for listening to that, everyone. I'm just going to introduce Kayla Halls. I'm just going to quickly skip through